You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're going to talk about something deep, but something that's impacted many of us. A subject that we haven't felt like we can maybe talk about, or we didn't have the support system that we needed to really be able to walk through it and to begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I find that many of us are going through stress and anxiety and different things in our life, and we're here to experience different things in our life. And sometimes the things that we experience, other people haven't. Other people haven't felt that. They haven't walked through that. They don't know what it's like. And it's interesting when someone actually goes through something that's not only painful, but it's overwhelming, but they come out the other side and they learn from it. They can also help us to grow. They can help us to learn. And they can share their story in a way that's not only impactful, but life-changing. We don't have to live in the darkness. We don't have to live in the shadow. We don't have to allow it to take over our life. And it can feel like that. But once we actually can connect with someone that's been through it, be able to connect with the family, it can change our lives forever. Anybody that's gone through the death of an infant knows how overwhelming the pain is. When you've gone through a death of an infant, many people have never experienced that. They don't even understand, and they don't even know what the words to say to make it better is. And some people really try, and some people can't try, or they don't try, or they're not emotionally connected, or are scared to be emotionally connected. And I've realized that in that situation, if you've gone through it, you might have felt alone. And in reality, you might have been alone. And so, on this show, I find folks that, they've come to figure out things. They've come to an epiphany. And they've also realized that their pain can help others as long as they can help serve others and help people in a way by not only telling their story, but helping other people to tell their story and to move through pain and agony and upset. And so on today's show, a new author, a children's author, with a nationally acclaimed book that just hit the bookshelves this week. And I have my copy sitting right here at the studio, and it's titled Rainbow. And I can't think of a better title than that it has. And Rainbow's author is joining us here live for the Live Your True Life Perspective listeners. Kuhn, it's so great to have you here live on Live Your True Life Perspectives. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you on the show. This book is probably, and it's an interesting word, but a labor of love. How long have you been working on this book and walking through the process to be able to give this book to people to be able to connect with?
I was working on this book for about 7 years, revisiting that day over and over and over again.
And I know that we talked before the show, and you've been a writer for a very long time. And so you wrote your first poetry when you were very young, right?
Correct, yes.
Tell me more about that, and then let's talk about the book.
Okay. Yes, I wrote my first poem when I was 7 years old, after my mother had passed away. And I wrote it, ironically, on a paper towel that I had grabbed when I was sleepwalking one night. And I had got my coloring pencils out and started drawing on this paper towel. And my grandmother came in the room as the middle of the night, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I told her I was talking to my mother. And I had wrote, a couple one-liners or, a couple words on the napkin, and I drew this rainbow of what I talked to my mom about. And that was my first form of writing.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
That's amazing. So at a young age, and you're a little girl at the time, and your mother's passed, and you're connecting with her.
Yep. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I know many of you that are listening to the show right now can connect with that immediately because, you've connected with that, you've been able to speak to, and you've been able to have that connection. So tell me, when when I've read Rainbow, and I've read it, 2 or 3 times already, and the illustrations are great too. Walking through that and creating that, I'm assuming that at one point in time, the idea of this was not even, the idea of writing this book was not even a thought in your mind, right?
Absolutely not. No. I never even heard of a stillbirth when I began writing this book.
And so when you went through it yourself, because we don't talk about things in a vacuum here, we don't talk about hypothetically speaking or scientifically speaking, we talk about things in real life. When you went through this in real life, did you feel like there wasn't any resources really? I mean, did you feel like there just wasn't anything, resources to not only give you hope, but to connect with you or feel like other people would walk through it?
No, I did not feel there were any resources. At that moment in time, I had heard of a miscarriage before, but as far as a stillbirth, I didn't even know that existed. I didn't even know that was a thing. And when I had gone through it, I didn't have any family members. I didn't have a small community. No one. There was no books. There was nothing that was readily available that I could even figure out how to grieve with. But even what happens afterwards? I mean, what do I do? It was more like kind of just thrown into the wilderness and having to fend for yourself.
You know, and I get that, and I think that anybody that's listening knows when you've lost a loved one, especially an infant, a child, there's no words, and a lot of people have never experienced this, so they don't know what to say. And then on top of that, it's almost like there's so many different levels of emotion and thoughts that are going through your head, like, why is this happening? What's going on? And then on top of that, when you went through it, had a daughter. What was she the age of 4? That was really happy about you having this child, right? So it was also trying to, what do we say to her?
Exactly. I didn't know what to say to her, and we've built this world up of welcoming the new baby, and we checked it off on the calendar, and we've read all the what to expect when you're expecting books. So I mean, she was right along with me. So just getting dumped afterwards of, well, what do I tell her? How is she feeling? What do I do? What does she do? It was there was no guide.
And I figured too, it's like, you're right, it's like foraging through the desert or the forest and not knowing what to do, not having any sort of light, not really realizing what's going on. There's nobody that's gone ahead of you to know it. And that's what I think is so amazing. And later on in the show, I want us to walk through your entire walkthrough, what happened, if you're willing to talk about that. But right now, you know, dealing with your husband in the situation, like, how did he, I mean, I know that most people wouldn't be able to deal with an emotion, but did he have a tendency of pushing it under the rug, or was there that tendency to want to do that where you felt isolated, or was he feeling isolated as well?
He, everybody has everybody has their way of dealing with grief and loss, but he definitely pushed through his days. He kind of got buried in work, and it was I was kind of left to do this, all by myself. It was, the bedroom's already made up. I had to break down the crib and take down the decorations, and I mean, all by myself, because it's like he didn't know how to grieve at that moment. So it's just easier just to not, until a couple years later he finally just one of these days just broke down.
I have some clients that have dealt with miscarriages, themselves, like, the actual, the mother or the father. I've also dealt with some clients and work with some clients and that, they had a sister or brother that was being born and complications happen. And after the birth, the child dies like 1 or 2 days later. And it's interesting how this situation, and I know that this sounds wild, but, without dealing with it and by sweeping it under the rug, I've had clients in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s even tell me about, they were so happy about, having this brother or sister, and they couldn't wait. And then, coming home and everybody was just acting strange. And then, they were told, well, your brother's not coming home or your sister's not coming home. And they go, why? They ask why. And there's not really anything in response. And they live in this questioning. And I know that it's challenging as an adult to be able to process it, but it's when we leave the child in the dark, and the child can turn into an adult later and still be dealing with this trauma. It's just like we don't realize the impact that it has on the kids and the family.
I couldn't agree more. It's like we don't give enough trust to children's emotional intelligence, to actually grieve or to give them the window of communication to even speak about their feelings. It's we're so sometimes so close that where we have to deal with our own stuff that we do forget about the child. And these children do grow up to become adults, and I couldn't agree more. They bring this baggage forward, and really that's where it could have been fixed and healed at that moment.
And it's all about having that transparency, and that's what I think is interesting, is that it might not always be the perfect word. It might not always be executed the proper way, but it's actually opening that line of communication. And I also find it's also about allowing people the ability to cry.
Yes. Emotions, man. Emotions are they're real. Yeah, it's the act of being vulnerable. And a lot of us don't want to cry. A lot of us don't want to revisit. A lot of us don't want to feel. It's better to numb. And children, they want to talk. They want to get it out. And like you said, being transparent and giving them that gateway and the allowance to do that is important.
I do have a question for you because, to me, this is something I don't know if a lot of people would think about this, but in order to write a book like this, you had to revisit the situation over and over again. And I'm sure that it was very painful, but at the same time, it seems like it would be cathartic as well.
It was. I didn't know it when I started writing it that it would be cathartic. It was honestly like a need that I felt I had to do because of the lack of resources that I didn't have and was going through at that moment. But visiting it over and over, it was I got to almost heal my child self when I lost my mother, because I didn't have an outlet to talk about her death as well. And they just kind of skimmed it like, I'm a child, I'm gonna get through with it. And you're right, we bring those feelings forward. And having lost a child, now I get to go back to myself at 7 and revisit the days over and over again. And you're right, it was very healing.
And I think that's powerful. And that's why, Janae is on the show today. Obviously an amazing writer and someone that's been through it, knows it, has understood it. And the best thing here that we can take from it is be able to understand what someone else has gone through, but also how that's connected in our life and how we can also help other people through even some of the most painful situations that we've gone through. So don't change the channel. We have a lot more of a show left. We have a lot more to talk about. We're going to actually walk through the real life situation that Janae had to walk through. We're going to walk through that entire situation, and also we're going to be able to connect with not only that, but Janae's words of wisdom. And that's going to help us too, because, I always like to understand those golden nuggets of wisdom. Everybody that comes on here, we got to talk about that. So we'll be talking about that, and also where to be able to find the book. There might be somebody that's in need of this book. You might actually be needing to hear the word, because this can help us to not only process, to begin to understand, and to begin to let go peacefully. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
stand up and jump in the deep end on perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're talking with acclaimed author Kuhn, and she has created an amazing book called Rainbow. Janae, it's so great to have you on the show, and we've been talking about some really interesting stuff, and I was going to ask you on a deep level, what are some of the deep thoughts that you want, parents and their children to talk about after reading this book?
It's a good question. I would hope that they would dive deeper into this their own spiritual awakening, the aftermath. I mean, where do they go? Where do we go? But not really influence their child about their own thoughts, but just really bring it up and have these heart to heart. What do they think? What do they feel? That's what I would hope.
I like that. Yeah, and I think what I hear you saying is that it's about opening that line of communication. It's so important to actually communicate about it, right? Than sweeping it under the rug.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to suffer in silence. Talk about it. Share. Don't be quiet. It doesn't do anybody any good.
It's interesting because I find that a lot of times people don't have the right words. And I feel like, having this book actually offers them the words and actually gives them a starting point, actually.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. It took 7 years to write back and forth and revisit that. So those are very kind words. Thank you.
And so you kind of open the line of communication. And, I think we talked about this the other day on the phone. I've had clients, and I've talked about this before, where they've lost a child. And some clients have lost a child personally as far as they were the mother or father. But then I've also had clients who are any age from 22 to 60 where they were impacted by that too, but there was no resource and there was nowhere to communicate. And so, like you said, people suffer in silence. Mm-hmm. And did you feel like you were, when you walk through this, how hard was it because you walk through this in real life. This isn't just somebody writing a book about an idea about this. This is somebody that walked through it. How was that right after that happened? Did you feel like you were alone?
Oh my goodness. Yes. It was hard. It was, coming home, there's no books, there's really no therapy. Just to kind of get through that. And then family members, they never lost any child. So forms of depression sink in. It's a very, very, very lonely road. And my heart goes out to so many families that are in the same position and don't have an outlet, don't have any connections, don't have any ways to just grieve.
And that's so powerful. And that's the thing is that when we return, Janae we're going to dig deep. We're going to talk about it. And it was, it hasn't been something that I've dealt with in my personal life, but it's something that I've dealt with other clients and situations. And, Janae's a wealth of resource of information to help us, but also it's about, we're all walking this life together. We're all going through our trials and tribulations. We all experience pain and suffering. And it takes a person to come out of that pain and suffering and kind of realize that there's more to it. And Janae's that person that's really realized, heck, I've been through this process. I dealt with it. I was alone, but I don't want other people to be alone. I want people to be able to communicate and connect. And I want families to feel good about being able to talk about it and not feeling weird about it and being able to open the lines of communication. So when we return, we'll be talking more with Janae, walking through the book, learning her nuggets of wisdom and more. So stay tuned. Don't turn the dial. We have a lot more coming up. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. You know it. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm speaking with an amazing author, children's author of Rainbow. And Janae and I have been talking today. You know, Janae, when we left break just a second ago, I was really thinking if there's a way, and I know that this is personal, but is there a way for you to walk through? Because I think that many folks that are listening to this, either they have a family member that's gone through it or they themselves have gone through it. Is there a way to walk through what you went through that day, so that we can not only better understand it, but I think connect with some folks that haven't been able to have that voice to be able to talk about what they went through that day?
Yeah, I will. I can actually walk you through the whole process of how it began, and then the aftermath of it. So it was that morning, just like any other morning. I wake up, and people that are, that have children, they know that, you always feel the baby kick or whatnot, some kind of good morning, I'm here. And there was nothing. And, I go from left to right, still nothing. So I go ahead and sit up, and still nothing. I called my doctor's office, and they said, drink some orange juice. Sometimes, the sugar will get the baby moving. So I was like, okay, did that. Still nothing. And I'm big into intuition. So I knew something just, it just has that gut feeling like something was just not right. And it wasn't her normal pattern. So they said, go ahead, go to the hospital. We'll meet you there. So I get there, they hook me up to all the monitors, and they put the jelly on my belly and start searching around, and they couldn't find the heartbeat. And literally it was black from that point on. It was, I honestly don't remember much after that. I just remember that moment just crying. And my daughter was picked up by my mother-in-law and brought to the hospital. And first thing she says is like, "Mom, why are you crying?" And I had literally, I went blank. And I just looked at her, and I just kind of blurted out, "She's not here." And I remember her looking at me too, like, what does that mean? And, thinking it's from my mother-in-law at the time, she was like, we're just gonna wait out here. We'll come back. And they sent in some chaplains and people that wanted to just, if I want to talk to anybody. And I remember, having the chaplain come in, and I asked her, honestly, have you ever lost a child? And she says, no. And I said, well, then there's really nothing to talk about. And that moment, I knew that it's a very singular road that families who have lost a child, whether it's miscarriage, stillbirth, or just child loss altogether, it's a very singular road. It's not like, there are no books. People want to know how someone else got through it. And that's why, just being that support, or just finding out those words just to talk from both sides of the spectrum, that was the whole quest.
That's powerful. I agree with you. It's we all have these different roads that we embark on. Some of it I think is interesting too, because, and it's hard to see this in the moment. I feel like it takes so much time. Let me ask you, how long did it take you to go through the grieving process?
Oh, that's a good one. Honestly, years. Like I said, I wrote, it took me 7 years to write this book, and I had to revisit that day in particular over and over. So I think I might have stayed in it longer because of that. but it could be, her would have been birthday comes around, or I may see something that reminded me of her, or anything. I mean, I think you're always going to grieve. I mean, it's a child.
Hmm. And I feel too, it's interesting, like when you lose like a family member, like a mother or father, and you're the first of the group of people that that loses their mom or dad. There's not a lot of support system there. But
Mm-mm.
on a bigger level, though, when you lose a child, and like you said, you asked the chaplain, and they said, "No, I've never been through that." It's just, it's almost like the person can't even understand or grasp the impact of that. They can generalize it, but they can't grasp the impact of that particular life being lost.
Yeah, it's not supposed to happen. It's out of order. It's out of nature's order. You're supposed to you lose your parents, not your children. So I think, yeah, it's unrelatable.
And I also feel too, the impact that you had with your daughter. So how old was your daughter at the time?
She was 4, about to be, I believe 5. No, she was a 4. She just turned 4. My bad. I'm sorry about that.
Well, that's fine. I mean, I try not to remember my own birthdays. Um, but so she's 4, and she is so. And that's the other thing that I find is that she is so happy and can't wait to this baby, is born. And I think that that was also a massive piece too. Was like not only was it the pain that you were going through, but also the pain that your husband was going through, but also the fact that you had to tell this little kid what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it was because a lot of times we want to go inside and heal ourselves, but when it affects everybody else, especially a child, part of the mistake is like, oh, they're children, they're good, they'll get through it, they're young, they don't understand. We make all these excuses because really we just don't know what to say.
That's true. We don't even know what to say to ourselves.
Exactly.
How did your husband handle it walking through that?
Definitely different. He just chose to move through the day instead of revisiting it so soon. He grieved a little later, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think there's any deflection on that. It's interesting, working with folks who have deflected that pain. At some point in time, we have to deal with it. I find that a lot of us humans believe that we can compartmentalize, but I've realized that there is nothing called compartmentalization. It doesn't work.
Agree, definitely. And I feel that the grieving process is different for everybody, but as long as you do get to it and grieve, just recognize it. It's not going to go away.
I think that's so true, and it's going through that process, and I think also people get confused because they say, okay, the grieving process, where do I start? And I said, well, you start wherever. You don't have to. There's not like a set place. But I think that the interesting part, though, is that I do think that we have to go through a state of what I would consider anger. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, I definitely agree with that, and that is one of the points I actually visited very early on was the anger. Like, why is this happening? That's not fair.
Questioning the reasoning, questioning why. And then did you
Hmm.
feel like after the anger, so when you went through the anger process of questioning and asking, and why would this happen? And why could this be? On the other side of the anger, was there more of acceptance or what happened next?
After the anger, it was to be honest, it was hopelessness, and that's where I felt in a very deep hole of being alone. But when I fell, that's where I found the silver lining and, the strength. So, it's,
Dive into that a little bit. So we go through this and we get to that point where we don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. What was the turning point?
I think it was my outlook that I remember having lost my mom at 7. I think that for me, having been on both ends of the spectrum of loss, I think that's where the strength came. It was a familiar feeling, but in a different kind of feeling. So it was like, it was that feeling to share. You have to just share and find this tribe that are like individuals, and we need to help each other get through this, because that's ultimately what life's about.
I also feel too in the process, having that child at 4 years old at the time, and we talk about it, but I do feel like children are a little closer to the source, and then I think we all try to be more like children, right? The older we get, the younger we should be getting.
Right.
It's like, as long as I'm at the age of 5 all the time, I'm okay. But as long as I'm at the age of 5 all the time, I'll be good. But did your daughter really help to kind of add that concept of, really put that out there, like she's in a better place? Did that help as well?
Yeah, she did. She became very nurturing. And I owe her a lot. She would always make sure that I was okay. And she would always, we actually took pictures, of our daughter, Brooklyn, when she passed, but, and she would always want to go through the pictures and just to keep her memory alive. And I think that helped me also to look from her perspective of, she's moving through it. And that always kept us speaking about her. So yeah, kids are awesome.
Kids are cool. Yeah, and it's like, the more kid-like we get, and I think yes, and then it's like we do have to hit rock bottom in any sort of situation like this. I do think we have to hit rock bottom to finally see the light. And at what point did you realize? And I think it would take time, because it's easier said than done from the outside looking in, because I think anybody that's gone through grief and struggle like this understands the pain that Janae's been through, and might even have been through some similar pain. At what point, though, did you say, you know what, you kind of got over to the silver lining, you begin to see this as more of kind of not purpose, because I think purpose is about finding our unconditional love for ourselves and others, but being able to take this to the next level and saying, you know what, this might have happened to me for me to help others. At what point did that begin to connect with you?
When I actually started writing about it, and the first day I actually put all that situation, that whole ordeal on paper, that's when it dawned on me that hopefully I can be that source of guidance for others.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And I know that a lot of folks that are watching or listening to this show right now on USA Radio networks around the country, you might have gone through pain and suffering as well. It might be different from Janae's. Could be similar. But it's about finding that silver lining, impacting other folks. And I think this is powerful. And Janae and I are going to continue this conversation. We have a lot more to go, and I definitely want to hear a few of her nuggets of wisdom, because it's powerful stuff. And then we're also going to find out a little bit more about where you can find Janae and how you can get a copy of Rainbow for your family. And also, there might be somebody that this book is perfect for, that can also help them, to inspire them, to help them get out of the pain that they're going through, be able to communicate it, being able to connect with their family. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking more with Janae about how we can find her, where we can find the book, how to connect with her, but also some of those nuggets of wisdom that can impact our lives on a daily basis. Don't change the channel. We still got a little more here, okay? So stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time, you know it. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been talking to acclaimed author of Rainbow, Kuhn, and it's been amazing because Janae, I just appreciated the communication earlier in the last segment because I think that connecting and understanding what other people go through can help us to understand not only our life, but can really help us to just be able to process things. And Janae, this is the time where I got to ask you, and it doesn't have, it could be about the book, it could be about the subject matter, it could be about anything. What are a couple of golden nuggets of wisdom that you would like to share with the Live Your True Life listeners?
I think the first one that has been very relevant in my life is to trust yourself. And I know it sounds really, really simple and kind of cliche, but it is so true time and time again that you gotta break that little second voice that comes in your head that doubts everything. You gotta trust yourself. Your way is the only way. I mean, it's definitely, other people's opinions or guidance is helpful, but it's truly, what truly works for you. And I think the second one definitely pertains to the book, that anyone that has ever suffered a miscarriage or stillbirth or child loss, please share your story, because you can encourage other families to open up and share theirs as well. And that ultimately promotes healing.
So true. Now, where can we find this? Because I am so happy to get the book. It's amazing, by the way. The illustrations are beautiful. The pages are beautiful. And it's a nice read. Because and for kids, there's some good words on the page, and I like that. Where can we find a copy of this? Where can we get a copy of your latest book?
You can get a copy on my personal website, which is www.janaekuhn.com. And you can also find it on Amazon, Goodreads, and also some local bookstores here in the LA area as well.
Awesome, because it's an amazing book. And is there also a page or social media that you would like folks to follow or connect with for more information?
Yes. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at the handle I am Janae Kuhn. All the same.
Oh, I like that. That's pretty good. I like that. That's a great one. I like that. I am. I love that. I love I am statements. Always good statements.
Right?
Yeah, it's powerful, right? It's like I am. It was like the power positions. I can't remember the lady that used to talk about that in her TEDx talks, but it was the power position, and it's like the power comment is in the power statement is I am. So it's pretty powerful stuff.
Wow, I didn't know that. Cool.
It's been great having you on. I mean, you're gonna have to come back on the show. I mean, we had craziness, all kinds of great stuff here today.
It was good. It was good. Thank you for having me, Ashley. I appreciate it.
Amazing. Janae is amazing. And, I love talking with folks that are just, we all have a gift and we all have something to share the world with. And some of us have multiple things to share the world with. And some of us have really deep conversations that we're going to help people have. And that's what's so important. And when you have somebody that's a beacon of light, that's gone through heck and back, that's been there in the darkness, that's known what the darkness is like, they can talk about it. You've heard me talk about things, about how there's certain people that can help us walk through things. Just like when I've talked about addiction, about how addiction is challenging. But in order to really overcome addiction, the person working with them needs to be somebody that's been through it. It needs to be somebody that's felt it. When somebody's going through marital issues, they need to be working with somebody that's walked through the same issues, has at least gone through the issues and overcome them. We can't talk about things in a vacuum. And that's why I have some amazing people always on the show, because it's not about talking about hypotheticals. It's not about talking about theory. It's about talking about truth. And that's what we do here. And so I hope this show has impressed you. If you've gone through this pain, if you're going to share this with your family and friends, if y'all are going to help to get some closure and some communication, that's amazing. If there was something else that you took from the fact that you're like, wow, somebody turned a situation that was painful into a situation where they were able to help other humanity. And I know that that's something that you can do as well, because I believe in our Live Your True Life Perspectives listeners, because I know that the impact that you have, the empathy you have, and the care you have is genuine and true. And so, now it's time to really think about it. What is it that I can do to really help? What is it that I have in me that I'm ready to give the world? I hope the show has helped you. We'll be back on the air next week as usual, every week. So I hope that you'll tune in to the next show. In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments or want to connect with me, go to ashleyburgess.com, ashleyberges.com. Click on that contact page, and I'll respond. Have a great day. Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back. And I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.